Good morning, and thanks for joining us today for Community Matters. I'm Liz Horton, Senior Vice President of the Greenville Chamber. We host these Community Matters discussions on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month to connect you with local, state, and national leaders. You can find past recordings as well as the upcoming Community Matters schedule by visiting our website at www.greenvillechamber.org. Just a couple housekeeping notes this morning before we get started. All attendees should be on mute with cameras turned off. However, we do want you to engage throughout the process, and we encourage you to submit questions through our chat feature. But also have a pen and paper handy because Dr. Gupta is going to lead us through an exercise later on in the session. So today I'm speaking with Dr. Uma Gupta. Dr. Gupta is a keynote and motivational speaker and leadership coach to senior and mid-level leaders. She helps individuals, teams, and organizations address critical items of personal and professional well-being, such as work-life balance, mental fatigue, and the courageous pursuit of one's purpose. She blends lessons, findings, and teachings from neuroscience, philosophy, and leadership to provide practical and hands-on guidelines to lead a balanced and purpose-driven life. She is a Fulbright Scholar and Director of Business Analytics at the Johnson College of Business and Economics at USC Upstate. She is the co-founder of Make a Difference, a nonprofit in Greenville that helps school children in poverty. You can read more about her work at www.umagupta.com, and she can be reached via email at uma@umagupta.com. So good morning, Dr. Gupta.
Good morning, Liz. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I would love it if you would start us off this morning by telling us a little bit more about change and why embracing change is so important to our mental health.
Thank you. So when we think about change, we have to somewhat compartmentalize. We tend to compartmentalize it into personal change and professional change. So we say, okay, at my job or my career, here are the things that I want to do in order to grow. And then we think about personal changes, which could be finance, it could be health, it could be relationships. And we tend to compartmentalize the two. But actually, the two are interlinked very closely, because when we change in one area, it also affects how we view the other area. So if you make some deep-rooted changes in your personal life, then it will also influence how you approach your work and how you approach your career and how you approach your colleagues at work. Because we are not two little compartments in our head. We are the same person that walks in and walks out, whether it's at the home or at work. So when we ask the question, why is change so important and what does that have to do with our mental health? I'm going to walk you through some findings from neuroscience that will show you why change is fundamental to brain health, to good brain health, and what kind of change initiates good brain health, and how this journey to change and embracing change is not a one-time thing, but that it is an ongoing process. So let me dive a little bit deeper into this change aspect. So what we see is that there are two broad changes that impacts our life. One is what we call, or at least what I call, change that is forced upon us, right? It's not change that we volunteered for. So the pandemic is a very good example of change that was imposed, that was forced upon us. And then we have the other kind of change that is change that we embrace. It might be where we say, I want to improve my health, or I want to manage my finances better, or I want to have a better work-life balance. That is what I call as embraced change. Let's spend a minute on forced change, because that's what we are coming out of or we have experienced over the last 12 to 15 months. Forced change is not just in the form of a pandemic, it affects our life in so many ways. So it could be a divorce, it could be an illness, it could be the loss of a dear one, it could come from the loss of identity, a job loss that suddenly happened, that pulled the rug away from under your feet. These are examples of what we call forced change that is thrust upon us, change that happens suddenly, change that in many, many cases is not welcomed. We don't say, oh, wow, okay, now my knee broke, or, I had a fall. How great is that? We don't think like that, right? So forced change rarely brings us joy when it happens. But forced change is the start of deep human transformation. If you were to look back at your life, you will look at it and say, every change that was forced upon you, that was unwelcomed at that moment, led to deep transformation of who you are. It could be a realignment of your values. It could be spiritual growth. It could be divorcing that identity to which you were so totally married that you thought this is what is so important. So, as we are coming out of the pandemic, what I want to share with you is that every change we initiate will also demand other changes, right? So, if you change any aspect of your life, you're now slightly transformed, and that transformation will open the door for more changes. In fact, it will demand more changes. So, we want to look at change from this is embrace change and this is forced change. And forced change, you want to think about it and say, what kind of transformation happened because of this forced change? So, as you're coming out of the pandemic, give it some thought and say, not just in terms of looks, I mean, there's so much discussion about looks and how we look and, how to dress. And that's not the point. The point is, how have you changed internally as a person coming out of this change that was just thrust upon us?
And Dr. Gupta, I knew in previous conversations that you and I had, something that you said stuck out to me and I found really interesting was the correlation between embracing change or pursuing change, not those forced changes that are, those changes that are forced upon us, but pursuing change. And how there is a link in doing that helps ward off dementia and Alzheimer's. And there's studies that have shown that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when we think about our brain, which we rarely think about, right? Because we cannot see our brain is hidden. So we don't always think, how does my brain look this morning? That's not something that we ask or we think about. But what we know about the human brain are two things. One is it's a very tricky, complicated business. The brain is always tricking us to do something that we really may not be good for us. Why is that the case? There are two parts to the brain. One is what we call the lazy brain. It's not because we are lazy, but the brain has to be lazy in some ways because every time you do a mental activity, it's consuming energy. So there is that part of us, of the human brain, that says, keep doing the same thing, right? Be in the same familiar space because that doesn't consume energy. You can just keep doing the same thing. You're on autopilot, and you don't have to step back and think about it. But when you do that, the neurons in your brain, they fire less and less, right? And then when we talk about the neurons or the nerve cells, the brain is active and healthy only when there is a strong amount of firing of the neurons and new pathways are created. So every neuron firing leads to a pathway, right? So if you're sitting in your car and you want to drive to a place, you don't have to think about it because that neuron pathway it's a well-traveled road. The brain knows how to do that. But when you keep doing the same thing that you're familiar with, the other parts of the brain, the other neurons, whether it's creativity, whether it's a new experience, all those tend to fade away, right? So think about it as a plant, your brain as a plant, and the plant is slowly dying when you cannot even see it. So the less neurons that fire, the greater are the chances of getting Alzheimer's or dementia. This is why we say that even as people age, we tell them don't give up. Don't say, okay, I worked for 30 years or 40 years or whatever that might be. I'm no longer going to challenge myself. So there is an absolute connection between neuroplasticity, which is How much do we use our brains for new activities, new experiences, new learning versus our mental health?
And these can be things such as taking an art class or traveling.
Yes, it's a very
So
good question. It really can be anything that you're currently not doing, right? Anything that's going to challenge you one more step is something that you can do.
thank you. So, our society's focus on productivity has created some serious mental health issues, not only for adults, but also for children. What do you recommend that we could do to counter that?
It's a very good question because when we look at where we have come as a society, and we blame it on technology, but we also have to blame it on ourselves and the kind of organizations we run. We believe that productivity is the route to success, that the more productive we are, the longer hours we work, we will be more successful, and success is a true measure of happiness or good health. Actually, it's the opposite. What we are learning is that when we push employees, or that when we are working 24 by 7, or when we place the highest emphasis on just productivity, everything else goes down. We become less creative. We are not able to see the world for what it is. We are not able to see the opportunities that lie in front of us. Our problem solving becomes very constricted. And more important than anything else is the impact that it has on mental health, right? Because you're continuously thinking, what is going to go wrong, or what is it that you have not done, or what else needs to be done, or what does will your boss say, or what happened to this project, right? We are always in that space of what else can I sacrifice in order to go through my list of things to do. And that has, and I'll just touch on one thing, and that is the impact on sleep. America is a nation that does not sleep enough. Americans do not believe enough in sleep, but we can do a whole session on just the importance of sleep and mental health. Your brain rejuvenates when you sleep. Your brain remembers the things it needs to remember when you go to sleep. Your brain analyzes all the experiences that it had during the day when you're sleeping. Your brain is looking at problems that it can solve when you're sleeping. So, because of this high emphasis on productivity, where is that going to come from? You sleep less, you get up early, you go to bed late, and that has compromised our mental health in countless ways that we as a generation and future generations will pay a deep price for.
And there's a lot of other differences between Western culture and European nations as well when it comes to time off. Will you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, it's just, I was in Europe, I was a Fulbright scholar. I was posted to the island of Malta, which is just south of Sicily. Just an amazing place, just the Mediterranean opens up every morning, sunrise and sunset. And what I noticed there was that, and of course, I traveled, and I'm sure many of you have, around Europe. And what we notice is that come 5 o'clock or whatever time work gets off, people truly do disconnect. They don't have their phones with them all the time. They're not checking their email. They're not checking their text. They're just saying, we're going to go out and have a good time. And a good time does not always mean that you have to spend a lot of money. It could just be walking, right? It could just be spending time with the family. And I used to see multi generations spending time together. When you're on vacation in Europe, in many companies, nobody is allowed to send you an email. Your email is turned off for whatever time period you're on vacation. But the beauty of it is when you come back, you won't have 300 emails that you have to process and projects that you're behind on. Somebody else has been assigned to take care of that work when you are not there. So what happens is this struggle that we have for work-life balance, we have a system, we have a society, we have an organization that is saying this is important, and so we are going to help you take a break, rejuvenate your creativity, and just do what you need to do to be a healthy, happy human being.
So we do have a couple questions that I'd like to cover real quick. Nikki asks, how does this lack of sleep as a society affect our ability to cope with change?
It affects at every level, right? First is your chances of getting terminal illnesses goes up significantly due to lack of sleep. Everything from, blood pressure, heart, you can go through the whole list. There is a link with sleep, number one. Number two, the ability to concentrate declines significantly. And we all know this, right? The day that you did not sleep, what happened? Or the day that you had a restless night, what happened? The next day concentrating becomes difficult. Lack of sleep affects our relationships. When we snap at people or when we are not able to see the true value of somebody who's standing in front of us, it can be attributed to lack of sleep, right? So at every level, our ability to solve a problem, our ability to focus, our ability to pay attention, our ability to be in the flow. What does that mean when we say to be in the flow? When you're in the flow, you're doing an act, a task, an activity that you so thoroughly enjoy that you don't even notice the passage of time. You don't even notice who came and who went. You go, wow, I've been working at this for 3 hours. I didn't even know that. You're not hungry, right? And you all can relate to something where you are in the flow. It could be a piece of art that you're creating. It could be a document that you're writing. It could be taking your dog for a walk. It could be anything, right? But you are in the flow, totally immersed in that activity. You won't be able to do that if you lack sleep. And flow is directly tied to happiness. Directly. There's a direct link between being in the flow and a person's sense of self-being, well-being, sorry, a person's sense of well-being and happiness is directly tied to sleep.
So do you have any suggestions? I know a lot of folks deal with anxiety, and a lot of that has to do with, oh, I have to do this. I mean, always constantly thinking of what on their to-do list. So do you have some practices that folks could do to help slow the brain down to help them sleep better?
So when we talk about anxiety, one of the things, and this is a slightly, different people have different views on it. Our approach to anxiety has always been what medication can we put you on? And we do this with our children as well, right? There is an alternative to this. There are certainly cases where medication is essential for anxiety. It's not that every case does not require medication. However, there are also cases where medication is not the route to getting out of anxiety. So what are the things that we can do? Let's do this right now, this exercise. It will take you just 30 seconds. So if you will all please just sit straight, uncross your legs, put your palms on your thighs, palms facing upward. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to close our eyes and we are going to just focus on the in and out of our breath. And your mind will wander. It will tell you, as Liz said, oh, here are all the things I have to do. Just keep pulling it back to your breath, just the in and out of your breath. Just stay with it. And we'll do this for about 30 seconds. I'm hoping that somebody will time us because we can do this for 20 minutes. Thank you. So some of you, I'd like to see this in the chat. Some of you may have noticed how it felt when you did that.
So someone asked, do you recommend something like this every day? And if so, how often?
So there are no standard formulas for this, right? When you are stressed, when something is hitting you hard, all that you have to do is to do this for a few minutes, right? Because the breath is your gift. There's nothing else that you have except your breath. You're alive because of your breath. So, in many societies, we come back to paying attention to the breath, right? Pay attention to the breath. It's in and out. What that does, it calms everything else down. It will bring down your blood pressure, it will bring down your anxiety. And for those 2 3 minutes, your mind was calm, or at least it wasn't, the rumblings of the mind were less than what it is otherwise. For me, true happiness is when we are free of thoughts. That is our goal. Unfortunately, it's not easy to do because in the human brain, we don't know where a thought is triggered from. If we knew that, then somebody would come up with a device that just, you can plug it and it shuts out all the thoughts, right? That would be wonderful if you can just say, okay, I don't want to think anymore, and we have a little device. We don't. And the reason we don't is the mystery of the human brain. We don't know what part of the human brain triggers a thought. So, what can we do? Here are a few things that you can do. One, remember that we are all dispensable. Nothing that we are doing in the world, nothing, nobody, right, is that important that we think, oh my God, nothing will happen. Life will go on, right? Remind yourself of that, number one. Number two, you are part of the human race. The anxiety, the stress, whatever you're feeling is being felt by millions and billions of people around the country, but around the world. When we are going through something, we think it's only us. Everybody else looks calm and happy, and they have their Facebook posts, and we think, wow, everybody else is in gaga land except me. That's not true, right? Others also face this. When we face a difficult situation, our tendency is to run away from it. We have a difficult emotion, we want to run away from it. We have a problem, we want to run away from it. Instead, you do the opposite. You have to sit with that emotion. And I asked this question in a previous session that I did for the chamber. Tell me where in your body you feel the stress. If you can do that for a minute, think about it and say, where in my body do I feel the stress? You can share that in chat if you like.
I know for me, it's neck and shoulders.
Neck and shoulders, okay? Across my shoulder,
Nikki also says across her shoulders. Yeah.
okay? So wherever you feel that, just focus all your attention and energy in that spot. So feeling in your chest, just put all your energies in that spot where you feel that, whatever that feeling might be, and the intensity of that feeling will vary depending on the situation. But because we are so busy, when we feel that, when that feeling starts, what do? Are we saying, oh my God, there's something happening here to my body? Let me pay attention. Instead, we are saying, oh my God, I have so much to do. I have so much to do, right? So pause is a great healer. Just pausing and move into that part of your body where you feel that and stay there till you will see that feeling slowly subside. Try that. If you're feeling that now, you can try that. We are not going to pause the session for that, but if you're feeling it now, just zoom in like with a laser focus on that part where you're feeling it. Don't ever run away from it. Why? Again, it's neuroscience. Whatever the emotion is hitting, it will it will whatever the emotion that is hitting you, that triggers the logical brain triggers the emotion, so it's a cycle, right? It's the emotional brain that drives the logical brain. We think it's the other way around. Nothing could be further from the truth. Your emotion will drive your logic. So if your emotion is, I'm feeling anxious, it will drive thoughts of anxiety. And the thoughts of anxiety will increase the emotion of anxiety. And it becomes a vicious loop. So you have to break that loop by zooming in on that area and just staying with it. It feels very uncomfortable in the beginning to do that. It's so much easier to just forget it, put on a movie, or watch Netflix or do something, anything, but stay with it. But you will see the magic of it if you just zoom in and just stay with that feeling of pain, anxiety, stress, whatever that might be. Just stay with it. You will see that impact. You will see it calm down, and you say, okay, this, it's a message there that this is transient. Nothing is permanent. The emotion that you feel today, you might not feel it a few hours down the road. So keep telling yourself, this is a transient feeling. This will leave. This will go. I don't have to make this a permanent part of who I am. That was a long answer, Liz. I'm sorry. Just
That's okay. So I know you have another exercise that you want to take the group through, but before we do that, I saw another question that I wanted to ask. Megan asks, what advice do you have for managers to implement some of the best practices to support their team members?
oh my God, that's a 3 hour session. Uh, uh, so very simple things. Understand that the person that walks into your office, your facility, that works for you, they're a human being that carries a lot inside that you might never know, right? And it might be a parent that's sick. It might be um, an argument that they had with the spouse that morning. It might be a child that is sick, or it might be some financial stress. We don't know that, right? So, what is it that you can do as a manager? Here's a very simple thing that has impact at so many levels, and this is proven. Whatever expression you have on your face is how the employee is going to interpret it as your relationship with them on that particular day. They have nothing else to go by. So if I have a stern or an angry face or I'm upset, they are going to think immediately that it has something to do with them. And they carry that, and then they will transfer that to 10 other people unknowingly, unintentionally. And before you know it, the mood in the office has come down. They did a simple experiment in an elevator where two people, one had a very high blood pressure, high levels of anxiety, angry, and the other was just, calm, nothing was going on. And by the time they got off the elevator, the blood pressure of the person who was calm had gone up, and they had not exchanged any words. It was just the presence, the body language of somebody else who was there changed everything. So the best thing you can do, again, this, and I wasn't being flippant when I said, that's a long session. There is a lot of advice for what we can do to become a happier place. And when your employment, when your workplace is happy, there's laughter, people know that they can make mistakes and they won't be penalized, and that the boss is open to ideas and suggestions, and that there's two-way communication, all the things that as hallmarks of good leadership. When you do all of that, the creativity, the productivity, the willingness to go the extra mile for the company, to do everything that it takes for you as a manager, as a boss to look good, your employees will do that automatically, right? So it really is a session where we can talk, and we can talk about very practical ideas that organizations can do to do that.
Thank you. I know I tell my son every day that his day will go the way the corners of his mouth turns.
Absolutely. Well said.
So,
Well said. Absolutely. I think there was a question that was posted. I just saw it, but
yes, Susan asked how they could find out more about your workshops and presentations. I do believe that Andrew has posted her website in the chat as well. I think you have some information on there, Dr. Gupta.
usually people just invite. I don't, and I'll tell you at the end that this was not something that I started off doing as a revenue stream. It is something I started because of a very difficult period that I went through in my life. So this is my calling. And if anybody wants a session, I'm more than happy to just reach out to me. I'm more than happy to organize any session that will help you to be happy.
Thank you. So if everyone has some pen and paper
Yes.
handy, I think Dr. Gupta, you have some questions that you would like for
Yes.
the folks to answer.
So here's just as a side note before we dive into the exercise. Can you think of one person who needs to change and is not changing? And see how quickly you come up with an answer. Can you think of a person who you think they need to change, but they are not changing? Yes? We all can do that so well, right? We all can find somebody who needs to change, but they're not changing. And in some other workshop, somebody is thinking of us as that person who needs to change, right? But is not changing. So that's again the trick of the human brain, that we are very easily able to see what other people need to do to change or to become better, but the brain doesn't apply that to ourselves. It's not because we are not good at it. It's just that the brain says, look outside, look all what those people are doing. But it takes a lot of reflection for us to draw the attention to ourselves. So today we are going to do that. The first question, and you don't need to post this in chat if it's something private, that's perfectly fine. If you want to, you can. So the first question is, what is the change that you desire? Just one thing, and try to keep it as specific as possible, not something I want to be a good person. Okay, that won't help. So something specific, what is the change that you desire? But that is not the important part of the question. The important part of the question is why? What is the change that you desire? The important part of the question is why. And for all these questions, it is important not to overthink it and not to seek the one right answer, because there is no one right answer. So what we are asking here is, what is the change that you desire and why do you desire that change? And again, don't overthink it. Whatever comes to your mind, that's the truthful answer. So to be healthier, that's a broad goal. You have to slice it and dice it and make it more specific. Okay, the next question is, what impact will this change have on your identity? So let's talk about identity. We all have a certain identity in mind, and we all cling to that identity. Could be, I'm a senior executive, I'm highly accomplished, I have done very well in life, I'm a talented musician. These are all identities that we give ourselves. And sometimes that identity is stolen from us, it's taken away from us. And that's when people grieve, because then they don't know, who am I if I'm not a talented musician who has now lost his voice, or a talented athlete who's, who has who lost a limb? How do I do that, right? So the identity, our marriage to our identity, often drives why we do what we do. So the question is, what impact will this change have on your identity? And where I'm going with this is to come away from your identity and to get to your authentic self, right? Because someday this identity will be gone. Whatever we are now, right, will be something else. So how will this change impact me over the long term? That's the question. Mm. Oh, so sorry, Nikki. So sorry. Mm. Mm. Wow, what an group of participants. Thank you. I'm moved. I'm moved by your authenticity, by your willingness to share so much. Thank you. Thank you. So we asked the question, if I make this change, how will it help me to be a more authentic person in the long run? That is where we are going with this. The next question, absolutely, absolutely, very profound. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nikki. The next question is, what is stopping you from making the change that you crave? Hmm, yes. It's so important to be vulnerable. We live in a society that overvalues resilience and strength, but resilience and strength and courage are born out of the womb of vulnerability. It is from that that we learn when we are vulnerable. Then we say, okay, this is what the road to resilience looks like. I remember people always saying, be strong, right, when you're going through a difficult time. And I told a friend that there's no drink that says, be strong. If there were, I would gulp it down, right? There's nothing called be strong. You have to learn, and the learning comes from being vulnerable, from recognizing that there are so many things that we don't control and saying, how do I bring that together?
And
So,
sitting with those emotions.
yes, exactly. So the next question was, what is stopping you from making the change that you crave? That's an important question from the context of mental health. The reason why that is an important question is we all crave to make some change. We know it's important. We want to do it. We've thought about it for 29 years or more, right? But for some reason, we have not yet implemented that change. That has what I call a leak effect, an energy leaking, LEAKING. It leaks our energy because then we're always thinking about that, right? We're thinking, oh my God, I really should be making that change. Why can't I make that change? Or it can affect your self-esteem, or it creates anger, or it creates bitterness, or you think I'm just this weak person, I don't have any willpower. So unless we answer that question, what is stopping me from making this, that has its own leakage, as I call, in our positive energy. So give that some thought.
And I know that when you and I talked as well, you said when folks go through this exercise of asking themselves these questions, there's always going to be what you call showstoppers.
Yes.
So can you give some advice on how to overcome that?
Yes, the showstoppers, it's a very good question. So the showstoppers is, the number one is, don't overanalyze anything, right? Humans are messy creatures. We are not this logical, rational creatures that we are brought up to believe. No, we are not. We are just messy. We have emotions. One day feels one thing, the next day feels other. So just say, I'm just like all of the, I don't know what the world population is right now, but let's say it's 4.1 billion, right? Unlike anybody else, there will be times when things are not exactly the way it is. I cannot compartmentalize this, but always tell yourself this is transient. Tomorrow I might feel entirely different, right? How many times you have worried about things that really turned out to be just total duds and nothing happened, right? You were okay. So remember that. The most important gift you can give yourself, the showstopper, is not pausing to reflect on the important questions. Just jumping into something in a moment thinking, oh yeah, this is great, this is perfect, I'm going to do that. Don't do that. Third, Stop getting distracted with a million different things. The more distracted you are, the more you multitask, the more you are on your phone, the more you are on social media, you will not be able to effect the change that your life really, truly craves for. That's really important. Think about your identity and think about why is this identity so important to me, and what will I look like if that identity is no longer true, or if I can minimize the value of that identity. We don't change because we are afraid of failure, right? So embrace failure. Say, in all likelihood, the chances of this succeeding the first time around are 60%. Okay, now we have some figure that we are working toward. And then you say, okay, I only was able to achieve 60% because what? Again, pause, reflect, stay with that feeling, spend attention on where in your body you feel it. Don't run away from it, because that will lead to insights that are so extraordinary for you that you'll say, aha, that's why I didn't do it. And finally, here's the number one trick to embracing change and succeeding at it. You have to make it easy for your brain. So I'll give you a simple example. You want to go for a walk every day, right? Your walking shoes must be right there. It's not you have to go to the closet, pick up your socks, pick up your shoes are smelly. Oh God, not today. No, right? Everything is right there under your nose. You will see what an impact that has. If you want to eat healthy, then it's the same thing. You don't have tempting foods around and say, I'm going to resist all of this and go there. Prepare the healthy meal the previous day and keep it. And take out everything else that is there in the house that is tempting, that is not good for you. You have to make it easy for the brain, because remember, the brain is a lazy brain. It wants to do what comes easy. And what is it that comes easy? What we have always done comes easy. Any change, the brain is going to resist and fight as hard as it can, because it doesn't want to spend time, more energy doing something new.
So I think one common theme that we have heard this month with our various speakers regarding mental health is making sure we take self-care, take care of ourselves, and that mental health is just as important as physical. I know at our last session we heard that put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yes.
One of the comments I've always heard that I kind of stick by is never set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. That you really have to practice that self-care. Are there any other questions that anyone has of Dr. Gupta? Susan asked, do you think the new research on gene therapy will be a big help for those who have mental health conditions?
I don't know enough about gene therapy to comment on it, but I think what I know is neuroscience and how our brain, the imaging of the brain, is leading to some amazing discoveries about mental health.
So, any parting words of wisdom before we wrap up today?
I would like to hear from the group, because if each one of you can post something that is part of your wisdom, right? It's a collective wisdom. No one person has all the wisdom that we need. So if you will take a moment to say, here is my piece of wisdom that I would like to share with the audience, that would be fabulous. Can be anything. What is your wisdom that you would like to share? Type away.
Love thyself.
Love thyself, yes. Very good. Very good. Be in alignment with who you are. Yes. Wow, look at that. We have nothing to prove, only to share. Yes, very true. Hmm.
Hmm.
I contain multitudes. Walt Whitman. I don't know where the words came to him from, but it was just like amazing. Just in a few words, he says everything about
Yes.
life. Yes. So let's hear from everyone else. We have, I think, about 30 people. I don't think we have 30 responses. So share. Everything that you say is profound because it is part of your wisdom. Liz, did you post anything? Give yourself grace. Yes, inspire joy.
Mhm.
We are human and imperfect. Yes, yes, yes. Amen.
You become what you think about. Okay. I want to thank you all so much for sharing with us today, everyone who joined us on the call. Dr. Gupta, thank you so very much for joining us this morning. I always enjoy your sessions and speaking with you and hearing from you. And so just want to thank you for giving of your time, talents, and treasures to be with us today.
Oh my God,
Um,
entirely my pleasure. Thank you.
So just want to remind everyone that a recording of today's Community Matters session will be shared on the Chamber's website and will also be sent to each attendee along with a survey. The survey is very important to us. So if you could just take a couple of minutes, just a few questions, it helps us create content for future sessions. So please share your feedback with us. Also, don't forget that this is part of an ongoing series, and our next event will be on Tuesday, June the 8th. So let's all do our part to care for our community. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Take care. Thanks to everyone. Thank you so much.